So I'm a believer in this. If most GMs will tell you that the whole point of a draft is try to get 2 starters and your third, you want like a role player in there somewhere. If you get 2 good starters, it's a good draft. And it doesn't matter. That rule applies if you have 5 picks or 10 picks. So I'm more of a quality over quantity guy. If you have a chance to package your picks and move up into the top 10 for an elite blue chip prospect, that is what the Eagles need on defense more than anything. So I would not be shy about trying to package stuff and move up.
Appreciate you being part of Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Should be fun for the next 30 minutes or so, because we are joined by one of our faves, does a great job in covering the Eagles for years, doing it these days on Inside the Birds with our other buddy Adam Kaplan, both on their website and with their podcast. Geoff Mosher, good enough to join us on this Wilson Wednesday get-together. Where were you, Mosher, yesterday when you found out Russell Wilson's not coming to Philadelphia?
Sitting in this seat that I'm sitting in right now, which is probably where I'll be at the same time today, tomorrow, the next day, I was just doing my thing, as we like to say, Jody.
Well, what were your thoughts, Geoff, when you see Russell Wilson came together very, very quickly, obviously, in the fact that we had the Aaron Rodgers domino, and then all of a sudden, all right, what's going to happen next? And then it happened really, really quickly. Obviously, there were more negotiations than 2 hours, probably 2 weeks that this was in the mix. But your thoughts on Russell Wilson? And the Eagles were one of those 12 teams that checked in. But when you think about why, was it just Russell didn't want to play here? Why do you think it went the direction it went?
Yeah, that's a great question. My first thought was, wow. My second thought was, oh, it's going to be Denver. And then you saw the massive, massive compensation involved. And it did make me think who else was involved and why was it Denver? And I think Russ had made it pretty clear in certain interviews, especially lately. While he was sort of playing a good soldier, you didn't hear him making any demands. He was kind of at least insinuating where he would like to play if he was going to be moved. And he had said that he didn't seem like an East Coast guy. And obviously he's not on the East Coast. And so I think that's why you saw Washington sort of strike out there. And then, of course, the Eagles looking in and not being able to get it done. The guy had a no trade clause, so he was able to dictate where he was going. I'm not sure if he's even traded unless Denver's willing to give up the haul that Denver gave up. But, at some point, Seattle had to sit down and say, he's obviously not been thrilled here. We have a chance to start over. We can kind of start that process now. And then you see Bobby Wagner is going to be or got released. Do we want to do that? Or do we want to keep Russell Wilson not really thrilled with us at a really high price tag? And so they got a great offer and made it. I think probably the biggest thought I had in the aftermath after sitting down and thinking about it is I've heard so many people say the Eagles shouldn't pursue Russell Wilson because they're not in a good spot.
Drives me nuts.
And then Denver,
we just talked about
they
it.
Beat the pants off Denver, and Denver was not a better team. But now a lot of people think, and I agree, that Denver is going to be in a good spot with Russell Wilson. So it's funny how that happens.
And absolutely funny, if not annoying. Geoff Mosher here with us. All right, I'm hoping you're right. You and John are right that the reason that Russell Wilson is not here is because more so Russell Wilson than the Seattle Seahawks not wanting to trade him to an NFC competitor. I think there's probably a little truth in both of those two statements, but I'm hoping more Russell made the call than Seattle made the call, because now I want to go back to the Seahawks and go, hey, if you're in full-blown rebuilding mode, and DK Metcalf is on the last year of his rookie deal, and you're going to have to give him a contract extension, wouldn't you want more of those draft assets? Because we'd be willing to throw you a pretty good one should the Eagles be attempting to acquire DK Metcalf from the rebuilding Seahawks.
Yes and no, Jody. I mean, I don't think Seattle is going to take the approach that they're 5 years away. I mean, nobody takes that approach anymore. And he is still a good, young, dynamic building block for whoever their next quarterback's going to be, and he's a rare one. I think I've seen that Tyler Lockett, who is a very good wide receiver in this league, can be had. But, I think you can easier find yourself a Tyler Lockett, unless you're a team that struggles to find wide receivers. We'll table that for a second. You can probably easier replace, though, a Tyler Lockett than you can a DK Metcalf, who is a rare breed. So I think to get DK Metcalf, you'd probably have to knock their socks off, or else they're just going to have him here and want to extend him to be coming up with the next quarterback of their choice.
Well, let's talk about the wider sort of narrative of what Denver did by giving up. George Payton essentially bought the Les Snead t-shirt, F them picks, Jeff.
Yep.
So, we'll throw it out there. Say 19th overall pick for DK Metcalf. Is that something the Eagles would consider? And is the NFL leaning in more that direction because of the success of the Rams? And we'll see what happens in Denver. But as you mentioned, all of a sudden they say one thing and say, we're not ready. We're not ready. But all of a sudden, Russell Wilson's in Denver and they look ready. Even in that division, we're going to be dealing with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Derek Carr. Good quarterbacks think they can beat anybody. It doesn't matter. They're not going to be afraid of that landscape. So is this changing the NFL's way of thinking? Like, why do we value this uncertainty so much over proven players?
Yeah, I'm not there yet, John. I think that there will be a natural copycat effect for teams like LA that believe they have a lot of good pieces in place and the right head coach, and we're there, but need to get over the hump. That's what caused them to F those picks, right? They had been to the Super Bowl. They knew what they needed to be a better team. They needed a better quarterback. And then on defense, they needed a few more pass rushers, and they were there. With Howie Roseman, we can debate when he's being honest and when he's not in front of the microphone. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes less so. But he has, and I think fairly, addressed the fact that he's not blinded by last year's success. I mean, they do think they're going in the right direction, but he has not made it seem like we're just a piece away like he has in the past, right? So I don't know that he looks at the 19th pick and wants to say, F that pick, give me DK Metcalf, and I only get him for 2 years, and then I got to really pay him. I think he's still he appears to me to be in the mindset of, we have got to keep getting younger, better, more dynamic, more cost controlled with our guys. And so I would think that he'd place a call. You're always going to place the call on how he will. But I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you that I think he's going to take the Les Snead approach and just give away a lot of compensation for a wide receiver, especially when he is skeptical right now of his passing offense and whether or not another wide receiver is even going to get the looks and touches that it takes, right, behind Goddard and behind Devontae Smith, to give up the 19th overall pick. If I could tell you with the 19th overall pick, you might get Chris Olave, you might get Garrett Wilson, you could get a wide receiver who you had for 4 and potentially a 5th year at a much lower rate, who you can see acclimating along with Smith and along with Dallas Goedert, as opposed to DK Metcalf, who's going to want to be paid big by the end of this year. You can see where he would choose be over, or the former over the latter.
Now we're combining a couple different topics here.
Yeah.
Whoever that wide receiver is, and I'm a big Garrett Wilson fan, he's still an unproven in the NFL, hasn't played it down yet. And there's upside, and there's 5 years of the contract as compared to 1, and you got to pay DK. So there's a whole bunch of things that factor in here, but you know what DK Metcalf is in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Do the Eagles more need a given at this stage than a maybe high upside, but still maybe, with the fact that they've got this youngish wide receiver group who weren't good enough to let them stay the course and be the passing offense that the coach truly wanted them to be at the beginning of the season, and then had to make a 180 change to go running back? How important is the way the Eagles wide receiver group is looked at as to they need a guy who's already proven he can get it done in the NFL?
Yeah, it is important, Jody. And I do think that was one of the shortcomings of last year's team, that the front office did not feel the need to bring in some kind of veteran wide receiver who can play a role. Like, this is maybe not a great comp, but Emmanuel Sanders, right, who played that kind of role in Buffalo, someone who would have been willing to come in and doesn't have to command 100 targets a year and can kind of be as a leader. to the young wide receivers. I think Devontae Smith is a natural leader, and he's very businesslike. He's Alabama to the bone in that regard. But that team really did suffer from a lack of a veteran there to kind of pull them through the dark days. And I think that's important this year. So, again, if I'm Howie Roseman, do I want to then pursue maybe a short-term deal for a Juju Smith-Schuster, maybe a mid deal? We'll see what DJ Chark gets. Or do I want to give up a first-round pick for DK Metcalf? I think that you weigh both. Both of them are probably pretty good for you. Certainly Metcalf, to your point, is that boundary X receiver that this team lacks. They have a lot of movable part receivers, a lot of guys who can play Z, a lot of guys who can play slot, probably not best at the X, but they're doing what they can. Metcalf certainly satisfies that, and he's worth the first-round pick. It's just the mindset that Howie's got to be in right now with how he wants to take this rare opportunity of having all these assets and trying to make the team better the best way overall.
But let's talk about those assets, Jeff, because I don't think they're going to take 3 first-round picks.
I agree.
I think, most people are in that camp. But I always say it takes 2 to tango. Just because you want to trade doesn't mean you can trade, all that. But if they're forced to take 3 first-round picks, I've said, I find it very hard to believe. You've been around this team for a long time. You know Jeffrey Lurie's mentality. They hired an offensive head coach. I find it very hard to believe they're going to take 3 defensive players with 3 first-round picks. I think there's going to be an offensive player. And then I want to throw in the fact that Russell Wilson, for whatever reason, and maybe it's just location, would not waive his no-trade clause for Philadelphia. Deshaun Watson last year, maybe it's just location, would not waive his no-trade clause for Philadelphia. Maybe it's as simple as that. But maybe quarterbacks look at the skill position players here and say, I need multiple guys. So it's sort of a chicken and an egg. Like if you have Devontae Smith and DK Metcalf with Dallas Goedert, then all of a sudden the quarterback might go, oh, whoa.
Right.
But, if it's Quez Watkins, what do the Eagles do in this situation?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think if you're a quarterback who's especially getting up there a little bit in age, and Deshaun Watson isn't, but Russell Wilson was, and you're looking for the best scenario as far as, history or offensive line or weapons, certainly you love the Eagles offensive line, but as you're mentioning, you can do better with weapons. And to be fair, the coach has a lot to prove. So and Denver's on a first-year coach too, but I guess, with the whole Sean McVay thing, Nathaniel Hackett was touched by Aaron Rodgers. So, he's automatically a genius and everything like that. But I don't think that it's not like the NBA where I think that, Philadelphia is looked at as, oh man, who wants to go there until you get a superstar like Joel Embiid, right? I still think good players will come to Philadelphia, but quarterbacks they're sort of an odd breed too. And they have some kind of, as Aaron Rodgers shows you, they've got different preferences for what they want and where they want to go. I mean, Deshaun Watson apparently wanted to go to Miami, a year ago. And it's not like they either kill you with great history, recent history, or with great playmakers. But it's Miami, and the state tax can play into that with your finances and everything like that. So who knows? And to get back to your original point, I not only do I agree with you that they're not going to make 3 first-round picks, I don't think they should make 3 first-round picks. I think the history, especially in the last 8 to 10 years, of teams that have had 3 or more first-round picks is dubious. I mean, usually the ones who have done well, it's because one of those picks was a top 5 pick, and you would hope that they would hit on that anyway. In fact, that was the Browns a couple of years ago when they had Myles Garrett, but then later in the draft, they took Jabril Peppers and David Njoku. So you have the Giants, who took Daniel Jones, Dexter Lawrence, and DeAndre Baker. I'm pretty sure if they could do that draft all over again, they'd probably have at least 2 different players. You can go all the way back to the Jets having 4 first-round picks and getting Sean Ellis and John Abraham and Chad Pennington and Anthony Becht. I mean, you got 2 right out of 4, and none of them stayed with you for all that long. Abraham did turn out to be a pretty good player, though. So I'm a believer in this. If most GMs will tell you that the whole point of a draft is try to get 2 starters, and your third, you want like a role player in there somewhere. If you get 2 good starters, it's a good draft. And it doesn't matter. That rule applies if you have 5 picks or 10 picks. So I'm more of a quality over quantity guy. If you have a chance to package your picks and move up into the top 10 for an elite blue chip prospect, that is what the Eagles need on defense more than anything. So I would not be if them shy about trying to package stuff and move up.
Here's I understand your philosophy, and usually I'm signing on with you 100%. I don't know that there's that great separation between 5 and 10 and 10 and 15. If there was, oh my God, the drop off here, you got to jump up. You got to get a. I think it's a very balanced top of the draft. No given standout. Got to go get that guy. If you've been listening to John and I, we have one, Kyle Hamilton, which we don't think the Eagles will do because he plays a position they don't put a big value on. But other than that,
is he even on their board? Would he even put a safety on their board?
That's a very good point by you, Mr. Mosher. All right, I want to stay on the offensive side. For the last couple hours, I guess it is, the Eagles starting center, or at least he has been. Don't know if he's going to be going forward because they got to work out a contract with him. Jason Kelce has been co-hosting on WIP this morning, and I've seen the quotes. He is not going to make an announcement or take a statement today that he's coming back to the Eagles or that he's leaving the Eagles. He's just hanging with the guys from WIP. So we're all left to speculate. Why would he do this? Why would he agree to come on WIP and then say, yeah, I'm not saying nothing? Was it because he wants to lay the groundwork for a at least upbeat parting of the ways? Is it that he likes to tease the Philadelphia fan base? And this week he's going to come out and say, of course I'm coming back to play for the Birds this year. Well, number one, why do you think he decided to do this? I know why WIP asked. It's a great get, but Jason's got to say yes, and he did. Why do you think he decided to do it and then not say anything? What do you read in the tea leaves, Moshe?
Well, there was an option C there that wasn't discussed, Jody.
Okay,
and it might be that they paid him handsomely to come on to the show. I don't know
the flagship station of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right. Yeah. By the way, I don't know that. I'm just saying, like a lot of appearances like that.
Here's one where I might be able to give you some inside information.
Yeah.
I think that's probably not the reason.
Well, okay.
All right. Well, I might know a little bit about the radio station since I've been on and off there for 30 plus years.
Well, they pay for the rights.
Yes. Yeah. Handsomely enough to move the needle. His name's not Cataldi, and it's a one-time deal. So I would suggest that's probably not the case.
Well, Jason's a smart guy, so I know where you're going with this. And listen, he's in the past, when he's made his decision on am I going to come back and play or am I not, a lot of it is how do I feel? What is my body telling me? He's always dealing with a kind of a foot ankle thing, but it's my understanding it's been under control. It's not as hard to control anymore. And I was told while I was at the combine that he's feeling in really good body condition. That's not really an issue for him. His body is telling him he can still play. In fact, I think he's even said that today. So then it comes down to A, he's got a family, he's got kids now for the first time. So how much, does he want to devote to that? And B, the biggest one is he's got this poison pill from his restructure last year that is supposed to pay him $30 million this year. He's not playing at $30 million. We all love Jason Kelce. You can't pay the guy $30 million. I think Jason Kelce even knows that. But the contract has got to be settled. So if he's going to come back and play, the contract has to be right and it has to be agreed upon by both sides, obviously, like every contract. And only then, when that's worked out, will we know if he's going to come back and play. And I would imagine a guy of Jason Kelce's stature, who just coming off one of maybe his best season, certainly one of his best seasons as a pro, still wants to be a guy who's paid at the top of his position. So we'll see. I'm sure the Eagles feel that way about him, but they also have an entire salary cap to navigate and free agency. So I have to imagine that the contract has to work itself out for this thing to go.
Yeah, you're right, Jeff. People do kind of gloss over the finances a little bit at times, and that's a part of it as well, because you do have to make sure everything puts together. But you mentioned you were in Indianapolis, so I want to go there with you. And obviously Adam was out there as well. You guys have great contacts. So two parts to this. First part is free agency. We all know people talk, gossip in Indianapolis. Hope you had some good steaks while you're out there.
I did.
Any whispers about free agency, and that would kind of clarify things a little bit for the draft. I think everybody does their mock drafts, understandably so. Pre-free agency doesn't make a lot of sense. You can kind of figure out where you're looking to target when you put the Band-Aids on in free agency. So whispers on free agent targets for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, and some years it's really clear. A couple of years ago, it was pretty clear. We came back from the combine. Adam Kaplan really on the forefront that they really wanted Byron Jones, and we're going to make a great attempt to get him, and they did. He just, at the end of the day, there's that Florida sales tax and kind of wanting to get out of the NFC East and play somewhere nice. That became a big deciding factor for Byron. Which, by the way, some of the best deals and trades are the ones you don't make, because that forced Howie Roseman to go get Darius Slay. And I don't think anybody would argue that Darius Slay isn't way better than Byron Jones. Sure. But moving forward, the whispers, the things you hear are more position oriented than person oriented, because I've heard a ton of names and they all fall into the same positions. One being safety, which is pretty obvious because without I can't remember his name right now. Anthony
Harris.
Anthony Harris, Rodney McLeod, both
and
free
Rodney
agents.
McLeod. Those guys are expired. So they have literally two safeties under contract, Marcus Epps and Kevon Wallace, and they haven't really loved what they've seen so far from Kevon Wallace. So they need to do something at safety, and you can't just rely on the draft. And the other position is going to be new for Eagles fans. It's kind of that strong side linebacker / pass rusher who plays on the line of scrimmage on first and second down. We saw Jannard Avery play that role last year, sort of situationally, right? First and second down, but then come off. And then the team would go to a traditional nickel look after that to rush the passer. But they are looking at guys who have that they ordinarily wouldn't have. Ordinarily, when you look at defensive end, you just look at a defensive end, a 260, 270-pound pass rusher. But now they're looking at the stand-up outside linebacker who can play that type of role. In fact, one of them yesterday just came off the market last night. That was Harold Landry, right? He would have been someone who he's
expensive,
the type of person, right? It's very expensive. Well, they're pass rushers now. Yeah. So, I mean, they've always been, but this is not the type of pass rusher that the Eagles have coveted in the past, but it's one that they're looking at now. So it'll be interesting to see now that they have some money and a new scheme, what kind of player that they target there. And then I would also say wide receiver. We talked about that, kind of a veteran wide receiver. May not be the biggest splash, but somebody with some experience to come in and kind of hold the fort down as they try to maybe groom up another one.
I want to stay at the linebacker spot. You did a good job describing what you think the Eagles are looking for in a player to be in a linebacker mode. If he's not there in free agency, they can't either identify the individual, or they do, and then the price gets too high and they go, well, we're not willing to pay that. Will they draft a linebacker? If so, will they draft a linebacker early, or will they wait till round 5 and go, now here's where we get our outside linebacker. It's also going to be a pass rusher, and you're rolling the dice at best. Will they actually think about taking a linebacker who may fit that role that you just described in the first or second round?
Yeah, so that's where the semantics are involved. I would say yes, they're going to draft a pass rusher who may have the abilities to be a stand-up, strong side linebacker, but they may also draft, not in the first round, but second, third, an off-the-ball linebacker who's more of a conventional inside linebacker, someone who plays the position that TJ Edwards now plays or Davion Taylor now plays, which is a lot different from that strong side linebacker spot that we just talked about, which is more of an edge rusher type of role. So I think yes and yes. I think both of those guys are going to be on the board for the Eagles, an area of priority. But if we're talking first round, we're talking more of the guy who's the pass rusher, and then after that, you start to look at the guys who could be your coverage or your nickel linebackers. And there are some decent names out there. I know everybody wants Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd, and that it's unlikely to happen because of the position they play in the Eagles' valuation. But there'll be some good guys in the second or third round should the Eagles choose to use their assets there. If I can really quickly bring up, though, something, I'm sorry, John, something that really we should think about. If the Eagles do bring in, through free agency, a pass rusher who plays that strong side linebacker position, right? That's one. There's still going to be a 4-man rush team predominantly. I don't think Jonathan Gannon's going to wake up and start blitzing like crazy, all right?
Yeah.
So that free agent is one of your pass rushers. Javon Hargrave's one of your pass rushers. That's 2, right? Josh Sweat, that's 3. Well, we got Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, and then whoever they draft, all competing for a spot on that rotation. It feels like if the Eagles do sign one of these outside linebacker edge rushers, that somebody may have to go.
Yeah.
Or someone's going to be paid a lot of money to be a rotational piece.
Yeah. And we all think edge rusher in the draft. I mean, you think about how many edge rushers are,
Sure.
you
Strength
got
of the
six
draft,
guys who are going to be top 20, and some will argue six might be top 15, and everybody focuses on that position with the Philadelphia Eagles. And it is going to be interesting. And Jeff wrote a great piece, if you want to read about that Sam linebacker role at InsideTheBirds.com. Follow him on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL as well. Last one for me, Jeff. Did you see the Joe Banner column on the 33rd team?
Yes, I saw. Well, I'm going to be a typical Twitter guy and say I saw the headline. I did not get a chance to read the story yet. But
the interesting part is not the story. That's fine. But the interesting part is obviously Joe, and was with Jeffrey Lurie for 19 years, has a history and understands how this team works. And he basically said the Eagles are the most likely landing spot for Deshaun Watson, pending all the legal issues. But I just want to get down to this with you. Then it was deleted. And it was deleted for a significant period, about 6-7 hours. And all of a sudden it was back up, but with significant edits. Who do you think made the call? It was an opinion piece, Jeff. So there was no need to change anything. It wasn't bad reporting. It was an opinion piece, but it was taken down, dramatically shifted. Who do you think made that call to make that happen?
Oh, I mean, it could be one of any number of people. I mean, it could have been someone making the call after receiving a call, being told you're going to make that call and have some of that change. So, yeah. Hey, listen, Joe knows, right? And we all know that the Eagles would have interest in Deshaun Watson. And I heard you guys talking about it before I came on. And there's a lot of legality and stuff that has to get settled first, but the interest will be there. And, are the Eagles the likeliest landing spot? You said that's Joe's opinion. I think that I still don't know because he also has that no trade clause and you don't know what goes through his brain on where he wants to be and what his options are. And then of course, what Houston's willing to accept. So there's a lot to get to between then and the trade actually being consummated. But we've known for a long time the Eagles were interested. And for those who have always said, no, it's a media creation. They're not interested in Russell Wilson. They love Jalen Hurts. They're committed. They talk about it. Well, we all know they just made an offer for Russell Wilson. Okay. So we know the story. We know the deal. It's probably going to be Jalen Hurts. But if not, there's a chance it might be Deshaun Watson. After that, I don't think anybody else. But, as the Eagles turn.
We're going to finish up with one of my favorites. A hypothetical situation, because you whet my appetite with one of the things you said previously about if the Eagles acquire either through free agency and or the draft certain players to give them depth on a defensive side of the ball, there might be a little bit of a extra, specifically on salary end, adjustment that needs to be made with guys who are already on the Eagles defensive line. AKA Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, and so forth and so on. I remember doing a show with our very own Barrett Brooks 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, whatever it was, for WIP. And I asked Barrett about, listen, the Eagles may want to go to Jason Peters and say, listen, we need you to restructure your deal. We need you to take a little less money. You're not quite the guy you used to be, and you're scheduled to make a lot of money. And Barrett just looked at me and laughed and said, oh, yeah, they can have that conversation. Jason Peters is going to say, thank you, no, I'll live with my contract as is. And then the Eagles will back off on the, we'd like you to do. And then if he throws down the gauntlet, the Eagles are going to say, well, we're not moving. We're not really going to cut him. So we tried. It didn't work. Would that be the same thing with Brandon Graham right now? If they went to Brandon and said, listen, we want you back. We love you. You're a leader, but everyone in Philadelphia, but your number is just, we need to redo this and we need you to take a haircut. It's got to be a little bit less. Would they have nerve enough to do it? And what would Brandon Graham's response be if they said, we need you to redo your deal down?
It's a good question, Jody. I'm not even sure it would be like fiscally responsible for them to want to do it, because at the end of the day, unless he's just taking a pay cut, which very rarely happens, what happens is they restructure, they move money down the road, which Howie has done for about I don't know, 40 of the 52 guys who are on the roster. So, and to Brandon many times. So, unless he wants to take Brandon's money and keep pushing, add 5 more dummy years and add more money against the cap down the road, unless he wants to do that, and I'm not sure he wants to do that. So, I get what you're saying. Brandon's aging. He's coming off Achilles. He may probably not worth the in the grand scheme of things, not going to perform to the money he's being made. But I would sort of look at Fletcher Cox instead and wonder if they would take
some Brandon. Got you.
Yeah, I would think that they would take because of Javon Hargrave's presence, because of Milton Williams' presence, and that they're probably going to draft linemen anyway. I would wonder if he was on the block if people called and had a good offer at the deadline last year. Nobody had a good enough offer. I think there could be some good offers in this offseason if they wanted to make that move.
Yeah, I was just looking at it real quick. I don't even think they could do it with Brand. It wouldn't give them much. They've restructured it so much.
Yeah, he's already signed for until I'm 80. So I've been dummy years.
Yeah. If they cut him, they wouldn't be saving all that much money. So Brandon could laugh if they say, "Yeah, you go ahead and restructure." I like my deal the way it is.
Yeah.
Moshe, always great. We appreciate when you come on. Inside the Eagles, both the website, Inside the Birds. Excuse me, I make that mistake all the time. Inside the Birds,
trademark infringement.
Both the website and the podcast, as good as it gets when we're talking Birds football here in Philadelphia. Thank you very much, Geoff Mosher. We'll get you back on probably when free agency starts digging in. We'll get you to jump back in with us. Thanks for doing it today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the keg you guys had delivered to my house. We'll do it again.
Thanks, Geoff.
If we're sending, you better be inviting us over to partake. Geoff Mosher here with us on Birds 365. All right, running out of time. We got to come back, put a bow on the show. McMullen and McDonald on Birds 365.